I'm a little nervous about this. Hang with me. Daniel 7. Daniel chapter 7 is where we find ourselves this morning. We are working through a little series of people who saw God in the Old Testament. And I was complaining about my sermon to my wife yesterday. I was complaining about the text. I was complaining that the text didn't do what I wanted it to do, as it often doesn't. And so I fight with the text, and the text, I hope, always wins, but sometimes it's a bloody battle. And she said, well, why did you pick this passage? And I said, I don't know. I just thought it would be a great idea to do a series on people who saw God, and this is one of those occurrences, and it's in a really challenging passage. This is a dream that Daniel had. And in dreams, almost anything is possible. I have weird dreams, and maybe you do too. And occasionally, in the morning, Violet will come to our room crying and say, I had a nightmare. And she wants to crawl in bed and feel better about life. And maybe you remember what that's like. I think I wasn't allowed in my parents' bed unless it was a really bad nightmare. I think probably the last time that I took refuge in my parents' bed, I was having this dream that I was at summer camp, Bible camp, where we had 10 kids from Lewis Lake at Lake Beauty last week, and we've got more going this week. It's wonderful, and so we're thankful for that. And I also had wonderful memories at summer camp, but I had this dream that I was at camp, and I was standing on the shoreline of Perch Lake, there up in northern Minnesota, and the lake was teeming with northern pike. I mean, they're like flopping out of the lake. The thing is just full of them, and it's just full of fish, and it freaked me out. And I remember that scene so vividly still, and I went screaming off to Mom and Dad's room, and I'm scared. And Daniel has a nightmare almost, and he has a similar reaction, one of fright that we'll see that we'll see shortly. We're diving into a prophetic passage, and I was visiting with Denny Sutton just a week or two ago, and we were talking about how there's not a lot of talk about prophetic passages anymore. When I was a kid, prophecy was kind of all the rage. It was very popular. A lot of people talked about it. At the end of the last century, really biblical prophecy captured the attention of American Christians, and we had a generation of Christian books and films sort of dedicated to the genre of biblical prophecy. Probably remember, some of you would remember Hal Lindsey's late great Planet Earth, that novel about what the end times could look like. The Billy Graham Association made Thief in the Night, that was played for youth groups all across the United States, scared them half to death, always played it at night, and that was scary. The rapture happens and people don't know what's going on, and that sort of thing. The Left Behind series came and took the Christian world by storm, and in some ways I think that was kind of the end of it. I think when Left Behind sort of fizzled out, the fascination with prophetic texts perhaps fizzled out with it. But I think if you were to look back historically, there's reasons that we were so interested in prophecy, because the 20th century was really apocalyptic. You had 2 world wars. You had millions killed across the globe in the Soviet Union and Germany and China. It was a blood-soaked century. I grew up in the tail end of the Cold War, always just kind of wondering if the bombs were going to start flying and we were all going to be devastated by nuclear war. You had other political events like the formation of the State of Israel in 1948, which seemed to have a prophetic kind of ring to it, and people tied that to Jesus' statement that, in one generation, all these things are going to happen. And so the clock started ticking in 1948, and we figured a generation was 40 years. So by 1988, man, Jesus is going to come back, and we're going to be in the end. We're going to be with Jesus, and world history as we know it is going to be over. and that famous book came along, 88 Reasons Why Jesus is going to Come in 1988. There was a specific day in 1988, I don't remember what that was, but I do remember that day, not the day it was on the calendar, but I remember being alive that day and just kind of looking up at the sky and wondering, is this going to happen today? I don't know. It was all very interesting. You had the rise of the European Union, and we wondered if that was the 10 toes of Daniel's statue. And then I think you couple all those things together with a very natural inclination that Christians have to escape a really scary world. I remember several years ago visiting with a dear old saint whose husband had just passed away, and she's now gone to be with the Lord. But at that time, she said to me, with disappointment in her voice, she said, I really hope that Jesus would come back and we could go up together. And there really was that expectation that Jesus was going to come back and we weren't going to have to face death. But that seems to kind of died down in the last, those feelings and that anticipation has kind of died down in the last 25 years or so. Maybe the global stage feels a little bit more stable, even if it's not, but we don't necessarily feel the threat of imminent annihilation. Maybe it's because we're so very prosperous. Life is generally very good for us. We have pretty easy lives. I was thinking about that this morning as I took a hot shower, thinking, you know what? Kings wouldn't have had this privilege of a hot shower 150 years ago, and here I am enjoying that as if it's a normal thing. We're very prosperous. Perhaps Christians are just burned out on prophecy altogether. We are super excited for Jesus to come back, and then he didn't, and so I don't know. I don't know what the answer to that is, why we don't speak about prophetic themes too often. Maybe one of the reasons is there's so many different takes on biblical prophecy. So many people are sure of so many things, but biblical prophecy has almost as many different flavors as it has interpreters. So I get to stand before you this morning and say, I have finally figured it out, and I'm going to answer all the questions. Everyone else in the world has been wrong, and so I'm kidding. I'm kidding. That would be arrogant and quickly proven wrong. But I do want to take you to Daniel 7 because we find God here. We see God here. And that's what we've been looking for. And so you have Daniel 7 open in front of you. And just follow along with me. I'm just going to read the first 15 verses, and then we'll kind of start working our way through here in fairly rapid fashion. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel saw a dream and visions of his head as he lay in his bed. Then he wrote down the dream and told the sum of the matter. Daniel declared, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of heaven were stirring up the great sea. And four great beasts came up out of the sea, different from one another. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. Then as I looked, its wings were plucked off, and it was lifted up from the ground and made to stand on 2 feet like a man, and the mind of a man was given to it. And behold, another beast, a second one, like a bear. It was raised up on one side. It had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth, and it was told, Arise, devour much flesh. After this I looked, and behold, another, like a leopard, with 4 wings of a bird on its back. And the beast had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. After this, I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, terrifying and dreadful and exceedingly strong. It had great iron teeth. It devoured and broke in pieces and stamped what was left with its feet. It was different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another horn, a little one, before which 3 of the first horns were plucked up by the roots. And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. That's a funny-looking horn. As I looked, thrones were placed, and the Ancient of Days took his seat. His clothing was white as snow, and the hair of his head like pure wool. His throne was fiery flames, its wheels were burning fire. A stream of fire issued and came out from before him. 1,000,000 served him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The court sat in judgment, and the books were opened. I looked then, because of the sound of the great words that the horn was speaking, and as I looked, the beast was killed, and its body destroyed and given over to be burned with fire. As for the rest of the beasts, their dominion was taken away, but their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. I saw in the night visions, and behold, with the clouds of heaven there came one like a son of man, and he came to the Ancient of Days and was presented before him, and to him was given dominion and glory and a kingdom, that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom one that shall not be destroyed. Well, so you got that? Does that all make sense to you now? You're clear, you know what's happening, you have a clear picture of the world and prophecy, and we're good to go. This is actually one of the most significant passages of prophecy in the Bible, and I just have to confess that when I came to Daniel 7, I didn't come here for the prophecy. I came here for the Ancient of Days. That's what I came looking for. But we have to deal with something of the prophetic vision in order to make sense of what's happening with the Ancient of Days and to be honest with the text that's before us. If I were to take you back, and I won't for long, but if I were to take you back to Daniel 2, there's another man who has another nightmare, and his name is Nebuchadnezzar, and you could read that, and he has this vision of a statue, and the statue has a golden head and a silver torso and arms and a bronze belly and thighs and iron legs and feet of iron and clay. And as that dream is interpreted, Daniel says, Nebuchadnezzar, you're the head of gold, and so Babylon is the head of gold, and this is a picture in symbolic apocalyptic form of the world history before it was written. And these are the great empires of the earth. The chest and arms of silver refer to Medo-Persia, and the brass is the Greek Empire, and the legs of iron are Rome, the feet of iron and clay. I'm just calling that Rome sort of revived. We got little pieces of Rome in there and try to hold it all together with the clay, and so that's Rome sort of revived, or maybe barely hanging on, somebody trying to pull it all together. And then you've got this stone that's cut without hands that goes and smashes the whole thing and turns into a mountain and fills up the whole world. And we understand that to be Jesus, who is that stone, who's going to obliterate all kingdoms prior and take over dominion of the entire world. I think what you've got here in Daniel 7 is you've got a repetition of that kind of pattern. So in some ways, this dream is repetitive, redundant, and saying the same thing twice as the dream here in Daniel 2. And if you know your Bible, you know that God does this sometimes. Remember Pharaoh's dream? He also had a prophetic dream. He had the dream of the 7 cows, the lean cows came up out of the river, and then the fat cows came up and ate them, and that'll give you nightmares if you try to envision what that looked like, cows eating cows. That'll make you think twice before you jump the fence next time. And then you got the skinny grain, or the fat grain come up, and the skinny grain came up and devoured that. And so Joseph says that's the same dream twice, and the repetition just means it's really going to happen. It's really going to happen. And so I think you've got the same sort of thing going on here. Daniel 2 is the statue and kind of the outline in rough form of the God's plan for the world. And Daniel 7 is sort of the same thing. All right? So we're just repeating that. Here's what I want to do with you this morning in the time we've got left. I want to take you through one glorious truth to embrace as we think about God's plan for the world and how God fits into that. And how we fit into that. I shouldn't say God fits into that, how God orchestrated that and how God has designed his plan for the world. I want to talk to you about one glorious truth to embrace. I want to talk to you about 3 painful realities that you can anticipate as we think about life in this world and what God has told us life is going to be like. And then we'll close with a commitment to try to keep our heart from despair, okay? So that's where we're going to try to go. So let me start with one glorious truth to embrace, just to kind of get our mind set in the right place as we're thinking about approaching Daniel 7. I want you to look at verse 2, which says this: Daniel declared, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the 4 winds of heaven were stirring up the great sea. All right, so you've got a picture of a big sea and wind blowing over it. All right, and this is very symbolic. And the sea is symbolic of the tumultuousness of humanity. Sometimes you might use the language of a sea of humanity. And in the ancient world, the sea was the picture or symbol of disorder and chaos. And over the sea, there's great winds blowing. And so it's a restless, tumultuous sea. And these beasts are coming up out of it. So here's the glorious truth I want you to embrace. And that says, God is the primary orchestrator of world affairs. Okay? So you've got the sea that the beasts are coming out of, but you've got the winds. And these are called the winds of heaven. And I think that this is meant to bring us back in our minds to Genesis 1:2, and 1:1 is in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. 1:2, the earth was formless and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And as you read through that account, you read how God brings things up out of the waters, the land out of the sea, and all that sort of thing. And so you've got the same kind of picture here. The winds are the winds of heaven, and they're blowing across the sea of humanity, and all these beasts are emerging. And this is telling us right up from the front, God is the one who is in control of world affairs. Okay, the beasts are kingdoms, they're the rulers of the world, and they're rising up out of the sea of humanity, but God is the one who's orchestrating it. It's his winds. So I want you to take comfort that nothing happens that God is not in control of. And we've talked about this before many times. So that's the glorious truth to embrace. God is the primary orchestrator of world affairs. It's God's wind that blows on the sea. It's God who raises up and puts down kingdoms as he pleases. There is no kingdom that rises up that he cannot put down. There's no kingdom that rises up that he was shocked to see happen. God never says, didn't see that one coming. No, he saw it coming. And that was all part of his plan, even the most wicked and evil of kingdoms. Well, out of this sea, beasts begin to emerge. And so let me take you to 3 painful realities to anticipate, as verse 3 talks about these great beasts that are coming up out of the sea. Reality number 1 is expect the rulers of this world to be truly beastly. Simply this, expect the rulers of this world to be truly beastly. These beasts emerge, they rise up out of the sea, they float to the top. If you're trying to envision this in your mind, they're coming out, and they're rising from anonymity to prominence. In some sense, they come up from nowhere. Now I want to suggest that there's something romantic about this, and here's what I mean by that. When I was a kid, and maybe we still tell little kids this, here's the wonder of living in the United States of America. If you want to be the president someday, you have a shot at that. We tell kids that. Now, it's partly true, partly not, right? Only so many kids get to be the president. But the idea is, we might have a future president of the United States sitting in this room this morning, and you just don't know it, right? But throughout world history, most of the great and powerful rulers of the world, who tend to be beast-like figures, also sort of came up out of nowhere. In other words, Joseph Stalin was in middle school somewhere too, as was Adolf Hitler and Pol Pot and some of those others. This is just kind of the nature of the beasts of humanity and the beastly governments. They seemingly come out of nowhere. And these beasts also rise up. It says they're different from one another. They have different strengths. They have different personalities. Actually, if you were to look in Revelation 13, you'd find all of these beasts, the lion and the bear and the leopard, all gathered up into one ghastly figure himself. But beasts tend to rise up, and by beasts I'm talking about tyrannical governments, I'm talking about evil kind of rulers. They rise up out of chaotic situations. They rise up out of the chaos of life, and so that's what's happening here as well. It's said that nature abhors a vacuum, and when if the sea is tumult and chaos, when there's a vacuum of leadership and stability and order, powerful people tend to fill in that vacuum. And so the beasts arise in this chaos. Let me look at these beasts with you very quickly. We meet a winged lion in verse 4. He's kind of like a griffin almost. He's a lion with eagle's wings. Lion strong, he's majestic, eagle. Wings mean a couple of things in the Bible. One, speed. They symbolize quickness, and they symbolize protection. So remember the Psalms, God will gather you under his wings. There's that symbol of protection there. So this is a majestic beast. The lion is the king of the beasts, the eagle the king of the birds. This is probably Babylon. What happens to this? Kind of interesting. The wings are plucked off. Ouch. It was lifted up from the ground, made to stand on 2 feet like a man. The mind of a man was given to it. I think what's happening here, you could read Daniel 4. I think that's a picture of that. Nebuchadnezzar was a very beastly character, very, very violent, very arrogant, very proud, and God humbled him. So you could read Daniel 4. That's a great story to read with your kids tonight or sometime this week after supper. Read that story about how God takes this proud king and utterly humbles him, and he spends 7 years eating grass like a cow. And I think that's probably what's talking about here. He had his beastliness taken out. So beasts in the Bible, they're beasts because they're violent, but they're irrational. They're just functioning on instinct. They're just chasing their own desires. They're not soulish. They're not operating from a sense of reverence toward God. They're just like animals. And people can be like animals, can't they? Can't we? We certainly can. So we meet the lion, we meet the lopsided bear in verse 5, raised up on the one side. So bear speaks of raw power. It's raised up on one side, it's lopsided like a teddy bear that got stuffed wrong. It's not real pretty. Probably speaking of the Medo-Persian Empire, and nobody remembers the Medes and everybody remembers the Persians. Really lopsided kind of an alliance going on there. It was told to devour much flesh. And so it was given the power to destroy. Had the 3 ribs in its mouth. You can figure out what the ribs are. There's your homework for you. Understand what the ribs are. I don't know what the ribs are. I could take a guess, but I'd probably be wrong. It could be Babylon, Egypt, and something else. I don't know, the empires that the Medo-Persians destroyed. Anyway, it was hungry and it was devouring things. We meet a 4-winged leopard in verse 6. The leopard, it's incredibly fast, even faster, we might say, than the lion, or known for its speed. 4 wings, it's really, really fast. Okay, so you've got a leopard, which is really fast, and the 4 wings, super fast. This was probably Greece. This is Alexander the Great, who conquered the known world in 10 years with a little army. Just absolutely incredible how quickly Alexander the Great moved and died at the age of 33 after this massive conquest. The 4 heads probably is the 4 generals that took over after Alexander the Great died. And 4-headed beasts, they just don't work very well, because each head wants to go a certain direction. They only got one body, and the 4 generals dividing up the Greek Empire didn't work very well long term, but it had dominion. Then you've got the rise of this terrifying beast. In verse 7, terrifying, dreadful, exceedingly strong. We're not even told what kind of animal it looks like. This is a unique thing. You have to imagine what this looks like. So it doesn't look like a bear or a lion or a leopard. I don't know. Figure out what you think it looks like. You artistic people can draw pictures of maybe what you think. Big iron teeth and stamping things with its feet and just pulverizing things. It's really, really a dreadful sort of beast. And then we meet this horn. In verse 8, I considered the horns, and behold, there's 10 horns came up among them, another horn, a little one, and this one tore out 3 of the other horns. That's also painful. Eyes like the eyes of a man. So there's something human about it. It's a horn that's got eyes and a mouth. And so it's less beastly than the others, we could say. The eyes of a man, and has these great boasts. And we'll come back to that. We'll come back to that. As I looked, thrones were placed, and the Ancient of Days took a seat. This is God. This is God. His clothing was white as snow, the hair of his head like pure wool. White as snow, purity, holiness. White hair speaks of wisdom, great wisdom. Okay? You don't get wise till you get old, generally speaking. Okay? So with age comes wisdom. And so here's somebody who's been around a long time. That's the picture. And is incredibly, incredibly wise. His throne is fiery flames. That speaks of judgment. Wheels. So this is a throne with wheels. That's kind of neat. This is probably not the scooter at Walmart. I don't think that's what it's talking about. This is talking about maybe a chariot. This is royal, majestic. It's talking about mobile. It can go anywhere. All right. It's talking about the breadth of the dominion of the Ancient of Days. He has his jurisdiction is global. It's universal. Verse 10, a stream of fire issued and came out from before him. This is judgment coming out from the throne. 1,000 served him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. So this is his court. It's majestic, it's glorious, it's the angelic hosts. The court sat in judgment, and books were opened. So the books mean the judgment was just and righteous. It's based on what people did. This isn't just the Ancient of Days saying, I don't really like you, you're out. This is what the rulers of this world do, don't they? Especially for their friends. They throw the books away. Aren't we kind of going through a little period in our news cycle where we're curious about what the books say? We're kind of curious about the list that's on the Attorney General's desk that was there and then it wasn't there and now it might be again. We're not sure. We're kind of curious about the misdeeds of the powerful and the politically connected. And the books always seem to be missing. But here the books are opened. And so judgment is just and fair and true and right. And then, as this is happening, this is just kind of amazing. Verse 11, I looked because of the sound of the great words that the little horn was speaking. So as Daniel is viewing this majestic picture of God sitting in judgment, all the while in the background is this little horn. Blah, 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 I'm so great, I'm so wonderful, blah, 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 and he just keeps going on and yammering on and on about how great and how powerful and how wonderful he is and how terrible God is, because we're going to learn that he's opposed to God. And so he's just kind of yammering on in the background. And so as I looked, Daniel says, the beast was killed and its body destroyed and given over to be burned with fire. As for the rest of the beasts, their dominion was taken away, but their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. One of the painful realities in this text leading up to the Ancient of Days is that the empires of the world, the rulers of this world, are beast-like. This is the nature of the world that you live in. This is the nature of the world that I live in. This is the general nature of human government. It is beastly. It is cruel. It is tyrannical. It is painful to live under, generally speaking. And We have been blessed to live in a somewhat less beast-like society, although it did occur to me as I was pondering this text that particularly if you are a black child in the major cities of this world, the odds of you actually seeing the light of day are less than 1 in 2, because we are a beast-like society and don't like babies, apparently. And we have done beastly things, even us as a society. We are the society who has dismembered thousands of teenage girls in the last 10 years in the name of affirming their gender. We are a somewhat beast-like society as well, aren't we? And all this is the nature of human government. This is the nature of the rulers of this world. It really is beastly. And this is just the painful reality the Bible tells us to expect to live under. Jesus is not king in his full and final sense. We are still under the reign of wicked people. Oh boy, I gotta quit. Sorry. Take a deep breath and not stop till we go. Let's see. Verse 13, I saw in the night visions. Behold, with the clouds of heaven there came one like a son of man. He came to the Ancient of Days and was presented before him, and to him was given dominion and glory and a kingdom that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom one that shall not be destroyed. So here, a man comes from heaven. So it's a man, son of man, but he comes from heaven. Weird. Because where do men come from? They come from earth. This man comes from heaven. What comes from heaven? God comes from heaven. So this is a man and he's God. And that should set your mind to thinking, oh wait, I know a character in the Bible who is man and God. And that is, of course, the Lord Jesus, and he comes to the Ancient of Days, and to him is given dominion. All right, here, you take dominion over the entire world. The whole thing. All peoples, nations, and languages are going to serve him. And forever. That kingdom will never be taken away. All right, that's good. We're all for that. Universal reign, eternal reign, invincible reign. And if you're following in the storyline, this is the end of human history. As we know it, this is the end of this epoch. Jesus gets complete control over the whole thing. All right, so case closed. We're all done. Except Daniel has this reaction. Look at verse 15. As for me, Daniel, my spirit within me was anxious, and the visions of my head alarmed me. I approached one of those who stood there and asked him the truth concerning all this. What does this mean? So he told me, made known to me the interpretation of things. These 4 great beasts are 4 great kings that shall arise out of the earth, but the saints of the Most High shall receive the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever and ever. Then I desired to know the truth about the 4th beast. And I'll get there in a second. So here's painful experience to anticipate. Number 2, expect to experience an anxious, troubled spirit. I'm fascinated by this. This is one of the ways that this text so disappointed me. Because here's what should have happened. If Joe is writing the Bible, here's what happens. Daniel sees the vision, he sees the Ancient of Days, and he says, oh good, Jesus wins, nothing to worry about. It's all good, we're fine people. But he doesn't. I'm like, come on, Daniel, you know better than that. What happened to my slide? It got all messed up, didn't it? Sorry about that. I hope you can make sense of that. It looks good on my computer. He's struck with anxiety as he thinks about the nature of these beasts and what it's like to live under them, their violence and their cruelty. He's curious. I need to know more. There's more about this that I need to know. And here's the other thing that I'm really annoyed by with Daniel. Daniel should have said, here's what I'm really curious about. Tell me more about the Ancient of Days. Tell me more about the Son of Man. But what does he ask about? He says, tell me about that 4th beast. Tell me about that little horn. I'm like, okay, I want to know that too, Daniel, but you're supposed to be more spiritual than me. You're supposed to say, Jesus wins and everything's fine. But he's really curious and unsatisfied when he thinks about what's happening here. So those are two really big surprises for me as I really started studying this text. And Michelle said to me yesterday when I'm talking about this, she said, "You didn't know that?" I'm like, no, I'm learning this too. I'm learning this too. Now, I think Daniel is reflecting something that's very common to all of us as human beings. We want to know the future. We want to find our place on the timeline. We're really interested in knowing when Jesus is going to come back and our troubles are going to be over. People ask me, are we living in the last days? We got to be living in the last days. Yes, we are. We're living in the last days. We have been since Jesus left. We're still in the last days. But when Daniel sees what's happening, it's scary. The rise and fall of nations is a traumatic, violent, bloody affair. I don't know if you've had to live through that yet. I don't know if any of us have had to live through the fall of our nation. But I know people who have, and I don't want to live through that. That's a terrible affair. I don't want to have to live under the most beastly kind of rule. Daniel is curious. He's curious about this fourth beast. He doesn't understand these visions very well. I don't understand these visions very well, but he wants to. And so he's really curious about this fourth beast in verse 19. And that's going to bring us to the third painful expectation, which is this. This beast is exceedingly terrible, teeth of iron, claws of bronze. That's new. Devoured and broken pieces and stamped what was left with his feet. This is a pulverizing beast. It just destroys. It crushes everything in order to take dominion. And it's got great power. That's the 10 horns. But this little horn that Daniel's so interested in, I don't know who this is. This would be the Antichrist, okay? In the final version, this is the Antichrist. And he seems to have an obsession with destroying the people of God. He seems to have an obsession with destroying the people of God. And I'll show you that. Here's the third painful reality you need to expect. And it's this. Expect hostility, soul-sucking opposition, and temporary defeat. Okay? I hate to tell you this. Again, if I was writing this, I wouldn't put this in there. But this is what you can expect from this beast. Verse 21. As I looked, this horn made war with the saints and prevailed over them. Would you have written it that way? As I looked, this beast made war with the saints and the saints win. That's how I would write it. But that's not what it says. Verse 25, again, speaking of this little horn, this Antichrist figure. Verse 23, by the way, says this little horn is going to devour the whole earth as a global empire. Verse 25, he shall speak words against the Most High and shall wear out the saints of the Most High. That's why I use the word soul-sucking. He's going to wear out the saints of the Most High. Shall think to change the times and the law. He's going to have his own version of morality and his own version of timekeeping. By the way, super tyrannical people who think they're going to rule the world always have their own calendar. They just start the calendar over. This is year one. I think Hitler did that, and they did that in the French Revolution and so forth. This beast seems to have uniquely religious aspirations, some combination of religious and political power. He's going to go global, and it seems to me like he's going to create some sort of global religion and bring everybody under it. And if I think about that today, I think, do we live in a world in which that's possible, that you could bring some portions of Christianity and Hinduism and Muslim all under one kind of religion? And I think we're getting close to that. We're close to we're in what I call a kind of a reversal of the Tower of Babel kind of moment. Babel is when all humanity is scattered by languages, right? And guess what? You can communicate with almost anybody in the world now through Google Translate and AI and the language barriers are breaking down. Technology is accelerating very rapidly, and we are becoming rapidly a singular culture in our globe thanks to YouTube. So when I was over in India, Abe, you can testify to this, for centuries, for millennia, the Indians have done arranged marriages. And now the Indians are watching our romantic comedies and thinking, I kind of like to pick my own spouse like they do over there, which I think we should arrange marriages now that I'm a dad, but that's a different subject altogether. But what you're seeing is the spread of one culture that is starting to dominate the globe, and a singular language, and humanity is rapidly becoming more homogeneous. We're living in that kind of a moment. All right, we got to carry on. But this beast is grinding everything into dust, even religions. He's wearing down the saints. That could be outright persecution. It could just be. Do saints in the United States of America get worn down? Yes. By persecution? No. How do we get worn down? Secularism, materialism. We just kind of lose our passion, lose our fight for the things of God. There's a final judgment. The court shall sit in judgment. His dominion, the little horn's dominion, Antichrist, shall be taken away, to be consumed, destroyed to the end. And the kingdom and the dominion and the greatness of the kingdoms under the whole heaven shall be given to, here's another surprise. This is a happy surprise. This is a happy surprise. All right, so we've given dominion to the Son of Man, and here dominion is given to whom? Class? The saints of the Most High. Is that you? I hope that's you. I want you to know this is what's coming. The kingdom is going to Christ, to the Son of Man. The kingdom is also going to you. You will have dominion over this earth. Jesus said in that amazing verse in Luke, "Fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom." We get to be a part of the kingdom of God, and that kingdom is going to be an everlasting kingdom, and all dominion shall serve and obey Jesus. This tells us that evil empires will all be torn down one day, no matter how unlikely that seems today. The kingdom is going to be given to us. In fact, 3 times, if you've got Daniel 7 open in front of you, 3 times, just so that you don't miss it, 3 times we're told the saints get the kingdom. Verse 18, verse 22, and verse 27. All right? Let me take you to the end of the matter. And one commitment to try to keep your heart from despair. Because Daniel reads this. Look at verse 28. Daniel says, "Here's the end of the matter. As for me, Daniel, my thoughts greatly alarmed me, and my color changed, but I kept the matter in heart." Daniel sees this. He understands it better, I think, than we do, perhaps. Though he doesn't understand all of it, we don't understand all of it, you don't understand all of it, and he's scared. Isn't it a scary world? It's just scary enough that it's almost not worth watching the news because you just live scared all the time, isn't it? It's a frightening, unstable world. Bad things are always happening. Evil is running rampant. It's running amok, and it touches you, and it touches me. And you and I might end up living through some particularly dark moments. I don't know. I don't know what the future holds. It's a frightening world. And there is no promise that I can give you from the Word of God that says God is going to keep you from suffering. In fact, I could give you 100 promises that say that you will. And we've sung about some of them this morning, and we read about that from Philippians 3. So how do we process the reality that God may bring us through difficult times under beastly sorts of rules? Here's the commitment to try to keep your heart from despair. Daniel says, "I kept the matter in my heart." Here's the commitment. Commit to meditating on God's good plans for you, so you're not swept away by the anxieties of today's misery. Commit to meditating on God's good plans for you, so you're not swept away by the anxiety of today's miseries. Today's miserable sometimes. Don't worry, it could be worse. It could be worse. The economy could crash. The electric grid could go down. All kinds of bad things could happen. We could suddenly figure out why the Chinese are buying up all the land down in Texas. I'm just trying to make you scared, right? There's a lot of reasons to be scared. Fear not, little flock. Daniel says, I kept the matter in my heart. Meditate on God's good plans. God has a plan for this world, and it is that dominion be given to Christ. It is that you and I take our places in his kingdom. All right, I need to be done. Whatever the unclear details mean, and there are many unclear details here, the clear message of biblical prophecy is this, and here I'm importing all kinds of stuff from the book of Revelation. Here's why God gives us prophecy. To help us patiently endure evil times. Patiently endure evil times. Persevere in faith. Don't quit following the Lord. Don't cease obeying God. Persevere in faith. Don't cease obeying God. Jesus wins. Okay? He really does. He really does. Don't lose heart. There's a lot of reasons to lose heart. I know them too. And if you knew more than you do, and if I knew more than I did, we'd really be afraid. But we can endure. God has good plans for you. Lord, help us to endure in beastly times. In Jesus' name, amen.